All right, 2:02 my time, 12:02 Eastern Standard. Um, Obviously, we'll include happily anybody who shows up from this point forward. But let's do it. We have for those of you who are just joining us, we're going to improve your restaurant's profitability in one day, and we're going to show you how to do that using a little tips and tricks. This is the first in our profitability series where PSP, our company People Serving People, shares with you all our tips and tricks to upgrade your restaurant's profitability in what can only be described as a fairly complex environment these days after the last few years. So the first bit of housekeeping, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is James Simpkins. It's on the screen if you did not catch that. Lifelong culinary professional. My elevator bio is a good dozen years in fine dining to start. 15 more years of creative consultants and project management. Private chef. Got a master's degree in food culture, in literature, how people write about food, and even back as far as my undergraduate degree in comparative religion. I studied how religious practices used food in their ceremonies and rituals. So I've always been kind of fascinated in that that food is an integral part of everyone's life, and it's become more or less a fixation in mine. But that's how I come to occupy this seat. Mr. Henson, would you do me the honors of introducing yourself, please?
Yes, sir. John Henson, like you, lifelong student of the culinary arts, chef by trade. Got into some purchasing, consulting, and then last but not least, software. So I've worked for See To It, Compete, and now R365. And happy to be a part of it.
Excellent. So we are experts in our own minds, right? And but we learn every client that I have anyway. I always try and keep it moving. And this webinar is a product of actually something that I noticed with a client of ours that came to pass. Like, that would be really interesting to take a look at. And here we are. Key items is what we're going to focus on today, using a 3-step recipe to use these analytics of key items, which are basically what you spend the most money on. We're going to follow it up with a Q&A, and then on the back end, if you'd like to get a copy of our slide deck, or you have some follow-up questions, etc., you can feel free to reach out. I assume there's usually a link, follow-up survey or something that will show up in your inbox. So that's that, and we're off. As I mentioned, the environment is, we use the word challenging, but it's just freaking hard right now because restaurants have always been such an easy industry to get into, right? It was never really easy for anybody, and now as of late, it's become even more complex and more difficult to enjoy any amount of success. Primarily, a 40-year high of inflation at 8%, over 8%, right? And that's just average. That isn't item specific. Groceries, for example, 10% year over year. Again, some items more, some items less. Puts extra pressure on food and labor costs, which again, we're already like prime costs are kind of our driver of whether we're successful or not. And now we've got extra pressure on both of those points. Overall, restaurants across the board need a 17.3% increase in their top line gross receipts to maintain last year's profitability levels. That's pretty insane. If you think about it as one out of 5, you need almost 20% more income to maintain a profitability level of last year. We did not make these up. We actually consult really prime source material, and this is from the NRA as of August of 2022. So, like I mentioned earlier, if you take a look there, food costs are not 17; they're 21.8. Labor's up 18. Utility costs, which are pretty much kind of slide under the radar a lot, almost 12%. And it just gets really, really, really burdensome, right? It puts extra pressure on us as operators, and to make sure that this comes out, because it's not just us, right? It's our employees, it's their families, etc. That this really makes a difference for. So when we look at these things, we tend to look at it as a bottom line, right? Let's look at our bottom line to figure out how these go. But my rhetorical question for you all today is the bottom line that you think you have really the bottom line? Or is there some other, are there other pieces of information, other sources of information hiding within this that we might explore? The answer is secretly yes, there are. There's the bottom line that we think about, and then there's the real time, often obscured by the complexity of these operations, right? If you think about how many employees you have in one restaurant, well, what if you have three? Or in our case today, we're going to look at a real life example of 6 locations. Some of you have more than 6, right? It can be obscured, and we might not actually know what we think that we know. This handy little chart, I think I was about 28 when I heard this. I'm older than 28 now. I saw this thing for the first time that kind of that caused a giant pause in my brain. Like, what does that mean? What you don't know that you don't know. Most of us know some things, and we know that we don't know other things. Like, you don't want me to operate on you, for example. I know that I'm not good at surgery. I know that I do know things about culinary arts. How do you know what you don't know you don't know? Well, that's what we're going to work inside of today, is how to bring those things to light. And what People Serving People, PSP, our company, moves the real-time data of your restaurant or restaurants from that area of what don't you know that you don't know into something that you can know and see permanently. Like, it stays there, it doesn't go back and forth. And this is by tracking your key items. We're going to add to your bottom line with 0 additional sales. I'm going to say that again because it's worth repeating. No additional sales. We will add to your bottom line by tracking your key items. It's not a magic trick. It's just a thing that we do. So what are key items? Using what's called the 80-20 rule, I think it's referred to as the Pareto principle. Italian mathematics guy, not a mathematician. These are the top items that you buy in terms of money spent, either the price of the item itself or the amount of gross receipts that you're spending on that item. So it might be something cheaper, but you buy a lot of it. Or it could be, say, a ribeye steak, which is not at all cheap, right? That's going to be definitely one of your key items. Why we focus on them is that they're the most important items for your business, whatever your restaurant or your units focus on. These are normally the most important items to that. And it's the most simple, most impactful place to start because of the financials involved with this. And a really famous guy who was kind of known for being, bright, said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? And I tend to translate it like, I know things about culinary arts and I can explain them to you simply, even if they're complex processes. And so what we'd like to do is introduce you to a simple way to take stock of the current state of your business and then raise it up from there. No additional sales, just a different eye for information. Good? Good. I'm just going to assume everyone's great. So in the realm of simplicity, this is what sprang to mind, right? This is what I noticed going over one of our clients: mac and cheese. Mac and cheese is ubiquitous, right? We've got it all over the place, and it's a long-standing classic. I looked this up. In North America, it has an over 300-year history, which means it's probably older than that, and insanely popular, right? People who don't, like my kid who eats nothing, she's almost 3, so give her a break. But she will eat pasta with cheese sauce, right? It's one of the only things that she'll eat. This is traditionally a low cost proportion item, right? We're not talking about something that costs us $6 or $7 to put on a plate. It's more like 1 or 2, right? Depending on the size, or whether you add lobster or truffles or whatever it is that you're putting in your mac and cheese. You can find it in barbecue shacks. Michelin star joints will have a version of it, right? And it's so common that at least personally, I thought it was easily overlooked. Like, oh, mac and cheese, yeah, we make money on that. Okay, good, probably true. But that sort of deference to the product is what we're going to explore. It's a really good idea, and how the the partnership of people serving people, along with the brilliance of the software in Restaurant 365, can take those easily overlooked items and put them right on your radar. Why? Because it's all in the details, right? And we tend to, the saying goes that the devil is in the details, but it's not just that, right? It's also the angels. There are better angels are in there too, and not all key item differences will work against you. You may come to find your key items are working really well. Maybe you've got 20. It's usually a top 20, 15 to 25, depending on your operation. Not all these differences will work against you. And what we want to do, or at least our advice, right, from PSP's perspective, is that you should note the positives, right? Where you and your teams are doing things good, note what's positive, how it got there, encourage those behaviors to continue. Negatives also, right? Obviously, we want to note the negatives, but not for their negativity, right? Not to cause a problem. It's just a mathematical reality. Note them, make adjustments. We will talk about this a little bit later, where the opportunity here, I'm going to go back just for a second, is that we don't need to talk about who did what or what we think about what happened or whatever. We're just dealing in a numerical reality, right? And in those terms, okay, so let's get to it. Let's look at the mac and cheese. For our analysis, I'm going to turn it over to John, who is going to take us through our example. And there's a bunch of information, but John's going to break it down for you starting here. Mr. Henson.
Thank you, James. So using some of the tools in Restaurant 365, we're gonna look at one item, and this item's shared across 6 locations, and we're gonna look at a time frame of about 5 months. So to the right there, we see a report, right? This is your item cost breakout. It gives you a running total of your spend, right? And we would expect to see some of those items up there, your proteins as being towards the top, right? Those are definitely key items. But I'm not sure anybody would guess to find their cheddar cheese in that top 10 as well, right? And it's look at the number there, right? 2.3% of the money spent, right? So definitely a key item. And then once we identify these key items, right, we continue to dig into those in the reports. So here we see out of these locations what our price was at a starting point, right? 5/1/22. And what do we notice? Well, we notice that it's up. It's up over $2, right, across the board for all our locations, right? And this report breaks it out. This is the actual spend, and if we would have kept that price as it was found on 5/1, right? And so we look at that COGS impact. It tells us right there. This is and red red bad is what we're looking at here. So let's take it further, right? What does this mean? So we've identified this key item. We've tracked its cost over a specific period of time. So we'll continue to look at this item. James, if you want to flip to the next one. So here we go. All right, we're looking at this cheddar sharp purchase item, right? And again, using the reports found in R365, let's look at these times and what we were paying, right? And even from a visual standpoint, we can see that there was a period of time there where something should have happened, right? And again, because we don't know what we don't know, right? We didn't know that the cheddar cheese is something that we should be focused on. Let's go ahead and show us those the prices. All right, again, back in May, right, $2.95, and then here we go. June peaks $3.36, and then eventually, fortunately, all right, not too often this is happening, it does go down, right? But during that time frame, like what happened? What was the bottom line we like to talk about, right? Well, let's take a look at that bottom line, right? If we had gone through there and kept an eye on these key items, right? Look at this, 13.9% for 5 months, higher level, right? So action should have happened, right? But we just let it go and we paid whatever came through. Go ahead and move on. There we go. So the change in cost of this one key item, right? Cheddar cheese. Again, we're just thinking, oh, it's cheese, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal, right? If we don't do anything and we don't act on it, we're talking about upwards of $6,000 a year, right? Of overspend, right? And this is an item that's really only 2.3% of your cost of goods, right? So what about these other items, right? The items that we would expect to see there, right? What's hiding behind those, right? So again, the emphasis here is let's identify those key items, let's track those key items, and then let's act accordingly and not sit back and wait. All right, James.
Yeah. The numbers we knew ahead of time, right? As we're building out this information for you all to look at. I knew that there was something to the cheese, right? It was there. After we gave it over to John and said, John, can you confirm our suspicions here? And John got back to us with this information. We were like, yeah, this was if it's surprising to us who look at this day in and day out, right? We're dealing with COGS and across the board from small units to $3, $4, $5 million units. If we're surprised by something, there's a good chance that you all would be surprised by something that's happening in your place of business, right? And so that's what we're asking you to consider as a result of this is that what we think about our business is often inaccurate, not because we don't know what's going on, but because it's impossible to be aware of every single little moving part at the same time. And that's why, compared to a numerical reality, what we think or what were our opinions about stuff, it's inconsequential, right? Our opinion we could take it or leave it, but the numerical reality is where the meat and potatoes is. Forgive me, I grew up in Ohio. We still use that. I don't know if anybody still uses that. But both People Serving People and Restaurant 365 allow these conversations, as I mentioned before, to be about numbers. They're not about people or personalities or who did what or whatever. We're not interested in that, right? That's something you all can handle in your units. That's fine. But our conversations are about a numerical reality, not an opinion about it, but what do you feel about it as an operator, and what would you like to do about it? What adjustments can we do from here? And as John pointed out, like this is cheddar cheese, right? This is shredded cheddar cheese that we use to make a sauce for the cheese. What other items do we need to analyze? I would bet dollars to donuts that this operator went back after we pointed out the cheese and checked on all those other items, right? We did a double check on the brisket, did a double check on the fries, canola oil, fryer oil, right? That you're frying your French fries in, or your dropped items. That goes under the radar a lot because you're just dumping it into your fryer and that's it. However, when you spend $17,000 on it over the course of a year, that should definitely be on your radar. So this is the type of awareness that we at People Serving People, along with our partners at Restaurant 365, this is what we bring to you in your day-to-day challenges in operations: is awareness, right, of numerical realities, independent about what you or me or I or your team think about it. This is what it is. So something to consider. I told you before it was a 3-step process. This is the 3. By the way, whether you're a PSP client or you're a customer of Restaurant 365, you can do this independently. You need to determine your key items, right? You could probably guess off the top of your head what the first 10 are, right? And then tracking those costs via a service, say, People Serving People, or you can get in contact with your vendor. If you're not a 365 subscriber or you're not one of the PSP clients, you can get in touch with each of your vendors that carry those items. Ask them, how's my pricing over the last month? How's my pricing over the last 6 months? Right? I'd like to keep track of these items. After you receive that information back from your vendors or from PSP Restaurant 365, you can then make those adjustments. And again, noting the positives, keeping those behaviors and buying habits going, and then noting the negatives and making adjustments, as John alluded to. Right, there's 5 months where nobody did anything, and so it resulted in thousands of dollars in overspend, right, unnecessarily. So 2740 on cheese might seem like no, but that's one item out of 25, 30. So let's say conservatively they're all $2,000. That's $25,000 a year, $40,000 a year, or more. Now we're into money that raises eyebrows and makes a difference. Because if someone offered you, I'm assuming, an extra $50,000 at the end of the year, most of us would take it, right? I'll include myself in that. So that's what we are interested here with this first in our series of profitability webinars is giving you an easy, simple way to make a difference in one day to upgrade the profitability level of your particular environment with no additional sales, right? We want to keep that 17.3% in mind and take it down as soon as possible. And we figured, hey, this is probably a good way to do it, right? One day you've got to be on the simplest, most impactful way to go about reassessing your environment. So, and we're going to say thanks here. I wanted to, this is not thank you the end. This is thank you. We would love to receive your questions at this point. So as we've been going, anyone with anything they would like to ask? I've got a few. Let's see, where do I want to start? Okay. The first question we received is, do I really, all caps, do I really need Restaurant 365 and people serving people? Do I need these services? I already have employees and managers on the lookout for stuff like this. Do I really need the services? John, can I have you feel this one?
Yes.
Okay. The answer, that's it. Yes, that's the answer.
That's the answer.
Okay. Why?
The level of reporting and detail is what you're looking for. I mean, the honest answer is probably no. As long as you have people that are dedicated to tracking this accurately, right? And that's really what it's all about, right? With R365, you're going to be able to get line item detail across every item, purchase histories, right? And what does the purchase history give you? Well, it gives you an insight into cost and spend, but it also gives you buying power for the future, right? James talked about this. What's in the past is in the past. What are we doing going forward? Right. Well, now I know my usage and spend on an item. So now I can go back to these vendors, right? Specifically about dairy, right? You can get it from more than one place. So now you know your volume, you know what you can spend. Go to these vendors and get your prices down. That would be one approach.
My earpiece just fell into my pocket. Sorry about that. But yeah, I mean, the honest answer, no. But do you have time? I tend to approach things like, I assume in all of our clients' lives that their managers and employees are already maxed out, right? That they don't have more an hour or two or three per day, right? To go take a look at these things, especially if you're doing this manually. Do you have time to be on the phone? Do you have time to go do this? So the honest answer, thanks, John. No. Is it faster? Also no. So thank you for that. Neil, I see your hands up.
Yes, and in exactly that same thread of thinking, what do you tell owner operators who are maybe at the beginning of this process saying, oh, what you say totally makes sense. Where do I start? I mean, do they take the high value item and the proverbial ribeye? Do they take their volume products, you know, their wings, their mac and cheese? I mean, where do they start? Because as you said, this can be a time intensive process, especially if you don't have the tools and the platform for that.
Well, I would say without tools and platform, again, it's a little bit you're on the fence. But I feel like most operators really are aware of those top 10. They could probably, spit them out just standing there. I know that we order 300 pounds of wings every week. Okay, that's probably a good place to start, right? My take on it is you can edit and change. You can always add on more. You can always take away more. If you want to go the safety route, the conservative route, put more in there than you think. Put the extra 5. Yeah, I feel like we probably spend a lot on this, but I'm not sure. Okay, it came to mind, so you should probably put that in, right? And then if it turns out later, oh, I talked to my vendor and it turns out we only spend X% on this, great. Okay, then that's not a key item. But until you've got the foundation, that awareness that I was talking about earlier, until you've got that, for sure, you want to put it in. That would be my guide to be. I tend to be conservative that way. Like I'd rather have it than not. and not need it than need it and not have it, right? So that we might be missing something, and that would be pretty tragic. I had another question here that I like. Oh, related to this. Once I have my key items, would I ever change or delete them? Yeah. I mean, in a word, yes. We did. This happens a lot, right? Especially think menu changes. You know, you go from spring to summer, you go from summer to fall. All of a sudden, you know, you've got a whole list of new items that you don't use anymore, right? Because they were on your old menu, now they're not on the new menu. You're going to have more, especially heading now into autumn or into winter. I mean, you're going to have a lot more heavy proteins. You get into my favorite foods. America's favorite food basically is comfort food, right? Meat and potatoes, some form of meat and potatoes, whether you're from Ohio or whether you live in California or Maine, that's going to be on a plate somewhere. So absolutely edit and change, especially if the numbers start making less sense, right? Like, oh, we're spending less on this. Absolutely edit and change. The advantage to Restaurant 365 is it goes with you. When you change, you just move the system follows you wherever you end up going. John, this might be a one for you. We have 3 different concepts. Will using key items still work?
Absolutely. You'll be able to track key items by location. And then to follow up on the question before that, this was like, let's go back to that. You don't know what you don't know. Once you do know, once you identify these key items and you look into them and you're okay with what you see, then yes, you can remove it, right? If your fryer oil is going to be, right, a lot of times it winds up being the actual Theo, right? You have to have it. It's going to be used. No, there's no sense in going any further, right? Maybe you can work a deal for cost, but once you identify it, okay, let's back it out of the key items and go look at the next one in line. And you will uncover, without a doubt, new key items based on concept or location.
Ooh, this is another one I'm gonna drop in your lap, Mr.
Mhm.
Henson. If this price increase had been caught early on, right? Theoretically, somebody was watching, saw the price go up. What would have been the fix? What would have been done to counterbalance the upswing in costs?
Again, shopping that item. Right? There's very few items that you are locked into with a particular vendor. For your proteins and your dairy, like they're available from multiple sources, right? Even some of your produce providers will cut you a break on some of those, right? Because they want more of the spend as well. So it's action. Once you see those items going up, then you react, right? You find a lower cost or you ask for a lower cost, right? A real life example was a restaurant I worked for that I just picked up the phone and called my seafood vendor and said, I need you to drop the per pound cost of these shrimp by $2, right? Or I'll go somewhere else. That was a $65,000 savings right there with just picking up the phone. Like lower the cost. Absolutely. They don't want to lose the business, and it happened.
Right.
So that's the type of action you take.
I was also thinking of a client of mine previously who said, we can't do these burgers the way that we're doing them, but we're really scared to lose our following. And the short version is look at the recipe, right? And they did an internal audit on their burger and were able to drop I think it went from 180 grams down to 150 grams per burger before anyone knew the difference. So you're talking about 1 ounce per burger, but these guys are selling 2,000 a week, right? So there's 2,000 ounces. That's 100 that you're into real money, right? And they tested it in house, and just by thinning the burger a little bit and noticeably, they saved thousands of dollars per burger, or 100. What is that? 100 plus pounds, 150 pounds of beef every week on a dollar pound. That's incredible. So these are the things that we do, right? The adjustments that I said earlier, right? You identify key items, look at the changes, and then make adjustments. John's suggestion about just ask your vendor. Ask, I need this to be X. That works. Otherwise, internal adjustments on your recipes. Construct the dish a different way, right? Deconstruct the dish.
And back to Neil's question about where to start, right? Well, you're going to start on the front end and back end, right? So what am I paying now? What is the cost of this item? And then what am I ultimately selling it for, right? And so again, using the reports in R365, what is this? What's my menu price analysis? What's the menu item analysis, right? Let's take the velocity, the sales velocity of this item and my recipe, and where does it put me, right? Is this a star? Or maybe I need to rethink this particular menu item and its cost.
Right.
So you have to look at both sides.
I got an A and B for you, John, and I think we'll do a couple more, guys, and we'll be ready to go here. This is interesting. We have contract pricing in place. Something else we could ask for, right? As
Yep.
operators, we have contract pricing in place. Can R365 track actual invoice pricing versus what we're contracted for?
Yes,
There it is. Right.
that was A. What was B?
Oh, B is a separate question. Sorry. Does Restaurant 365 provide an overview? Oh, I know the answer to this. Does R365 provide an overview of price changes in all of your key items at a certain rate, say 3%? I assume variance is what they're talking about here.
Correct. Yes, you can set up a threshold, right? Variance based on categories, right? Or particular items. But let's say you want to keep an eye on your dairy. Well, you can flag every item that's coming in tagged as dairy, and you want to see a 3 or 4% variance either way. Then yes, you'll see that highlighted on the invoice.
Fantastic. All right, and the last one here. Is there a trial period? Do I have to sign up for PSP services, Restaurant 365 services for a year or more, or do I get to try them out first? Is there a trial period?
It's 5 years. No.
It's 5. Yeah, you're stuck with us for 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Paperwork is on its way.
Uh, for us, there absolutely is. Yeah, we want to. So we don't even lock in contract pricing until we're aware of what it is that's happening in your restaurant, in your operations, right? So we have a get to know each other period, and that varies on who it is and what sort of operations and how many units you've got. Right, we've got to make an assessment before we get you into a contract relationship for 1, 3, 5 years, 10 years, whatever you want to do. So absolutely, yeah. For at least on the PSP side, yeah, we take time to get to know our clients, get to know your operations, and it's not like you have to sign blind. And we don't, sometimes we say no, sometimes our clients say no, and that's totally part of the process. So yeah, absolutely. There's no it's not a bait and switch type of thing or carrot and stick operation. We want to get to know you. We want you to get to know us, and then we'll go from there. So. Welcome, Mr. Andrew. I saw you in there for momentarily. Oh, he's gone. Okay, if there are no more questions, I think that's the lion's share, or they overlapped, right? And we were able to answer like simultaneously. Anything else to follow up with here, Mr. Henson? John, did we leave anything hanging? Did we forget anything? It feels like no.
It feels like
and again,
no.
Okay.
And then,
yeah, I mean, the first in the series, guys. So, right, we'll offer this later on. We'll have lots of different opportunities, and we will try and keep these to, what are we at, 44, 45 minutes now. This is the maximum that we want to go. We want you to grab what we offer, take it, go use it, right? It isn't just to watch a webinar. It's to actually take what we have, go use it, and use it in your real day-to-day operations. So,
and then obviously I'll add that obviously if anybody on the call, if they want a deeper dive, if you want to see some more of this, reach out and that can be arranged.
We will follow up. Also, your questions, we tried to keep them anonymous because we're going to use this webinar on social media. We are, both parties, Restaurant 365 and PSP, incredibly protective of your data, your names, your financials. None of that will be available to anybody in the public. And that's a rule for all of our webinar series. We'll do our darndest to make sure that never happens. So thank you for your attendance, for your attention, for your questions, for John, your partnership. Of course, you know how much we appreciate you and all of the things that I email you every single week. And for those of you who are familiar with us and those of you who aren't, really thank you for your attention. It's a pleasure to do this with you, for you. and we look forward to the next in a series. If there's nothing else, we will bid you adieu, and until the next one. À la prochaine. Thanks very much.